Another Friday night, another passive-aggressive dinner with Chad. "Still slinging those mobile games, Maya?" he'd asked, a smirk playing on his lips. Chad, the golden boy lawyer, partner at Sterling and Vance, always knew how to land a jab. "Building a digital empire," I'd muttered, pushing the salad around my plate. 38, single, from Austin, and seemingly a failure. That's what everyone saw, especially Chad. He saw a wasted degree, a comfortable job tossed aside for, well, for what? Games he never understood. They were just a cover. My true work was hidden. He didn't know about Novatech Games. He didn't know about the millions in revenue, the 3.5 million active users across 3 platforms, or the offers I'd already turned down. He definitely didn't know about adaptive AI. He just saw the Fisher-Price versions of Angry Birds, as he so eloquently put it. The truth, I was building something that could change the entire industry. And he, my big brother, the successful lawyer, was completely clueless. His condescension, fuel, his doubts, my secret weapon. The pivotal moment, it was Thanksgiving 5 years ago, the annual family gathering. Chad, fresh from closing a massive deal, was practically glowing. He recounted the intricacies of the merger, the legal maneuvering, the triumph. Then, inevitably, the conversation turned to me. "So, Maya," he began, that familiar smirk already forming, "still playing around with those games?" "I just released Pixel Pop, a simple puzzle game. It was designed to be unassuming, a distraction. It was also my first real testbed for adaptive AI, though nobody knew that. The early metrics were promising, but I downplayed it all. I had to." His voice dripped with that patronizing tone. "It's a hobby, Maya, a nice little hobby." That night, I made the decision. Instead of defending myself, of arguing, of trying to explain the complex algorithms and the potential for disruption, I simply smiled. I let him think what he wanted. Let everyone think what they wanted. The early days were a grind. I was juggling freelance consulting gigs, mostly data analysis and UI design, to fund Novatech. 20-hour workdays, fueled by caffeine and a burning desire to prove myself. The other developers I knew saw the consulting as a sign of instability. "You're spreading yourself too thin," they'd say. "Focus on one thing." I nodded, agreeing. They didn't see the real focus. They didn't see the lines of code, the constant data analysis, the months spent perfecting adaptive AI. They saw the surface, the failure. I let them. Each dismissive comment, each pitying glance just fueled the fire. I remember the sting of rejection. I pitched Echo Bloom to a major publisher, showing them early versions of the AI. They passed, said it was too niche, that the market wasn't ready. That fueled me. The next few months were spent relentlessly refining the algorithm. I fed it more data, adjusted the pacing, optimized the player experience. I used it as a test and deployed to see if it would work. I kept the focus on simple games to avoid suspicion. Now, Echo Bloom is about to change everything. The release went viral. Retention rates were off the charts. People were playing for hours. Streamers were baffled. Reddit threads exploded with speculation. The rumors were starting to spread. The algorithm was working. The emails started pouring in, one of them from Titan Games, expressing interest in a collaboration. This was the beginning of the end, and a mixture of excitement and terror flooded me. The game was on. The email from Titan Games. That's when the carefully constructed facade began to crack. They weren't interested in a partnership. They wanted to acquire adaptive AI. Their initial offer was a cool $100 million, cash up front, with a 10% royalty on any game utilizing the engine. I countered, of course. I had leverage now. My counteroffer, $250 million, plus a seat on their board, with full creative control over adaptive AI's future development. They accepted. The meeting with Titan Games went even better than expected. Their team, a mix of seasoned executives and young, hungry developers, were blown away by Echo Bloom's user metrics. Daily active users, DAU, were up 300% in the first month, with a staggering 70% retention rate after week 1, unheard of in the mobile gaming space. The game was generating $1.2 million in monthly revenue and climbing. They saw the potential, the revolution. They wanted it. Then came the condition. The final presentation, the official signing, had to be held at Sterling and Vance, Chad's law firm. He'd be thrilled, I thought, to host a groundbreaking deal. The irony was delicious. I savored the thought of his reaction. The day arrived. The sleek, glass and steel offices of Sterling and Vance. Chad, in his power suit, greeted me with a condescending smile, leading me into a conference room filled with his senior partners. The room buzzed with the usual lawyerly chatter. "Maya," he announced, his voice dripping with forced affection, "allow me to introduce my exceptionally creative sister. She's made a name for herself in the gaming world." The partners chuckled, a mixture of polite amusement and thinly veiled disdain. Then the doors opened. In walked the executive team from Titan Games, CEO, CTO, and head of acquisitions. Silence. The room went dead quiet. Chad's face was a mask of confusion. He glanced at me, then back at the Titan Games team, his jaw visibly dropping. He was starting to connect the dots, a slow, agonizing process. I took a deep breath. This was it. "Good morning," I began, my voice calm and steady. "Thank you all for being here. As you know, I'm Maya. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, this presentation is about adaptive AI and the future of gaming." I launched into the presentation. I showed the graphs, the charts, the exponential growth. The room was captivated. As I spoke, I watched Chad's face. The initial shock gave way to disbelief, then to dawning horror, and finally, grudging respect. He understood. He finally understood. The immediate aftermath was a whirlwind. The partners, who had once dismissed me as a harmless hobbyist, now swarmed me, eager to invest in my next venture. Chad's colleagues, who'd probably been avoiding him all these years, now saw me as a potential cash cow. The power dynamic had shifted so violently, it was almost comical. The Titan Games acquisition went through, officially valuing Adaptive AI at $300 million. Novatech Games was dissolved, but not before I'd transferred my holdings into a shell corporation, ensuring my continued anonymity and ability to operate outside of the corporate world. I also established a venture capital fund, Novatech Ventures, with $50 million in initial capital, specifically to invest in promising indie game developers, the kind of developers that Chad and the firm would likely have scoffed at. Life was changed forever. Interviews, speaking engagements, partnership offers from all over the world. My net worth skyrocketed, but the money wasn't what mattered. It was the validation, the freedom, and the opportunity to build something truly meaningful. My influence grew, but I was not going to let it be about ego. Some relationships flourished, nurtured by genuine admiration and respect. Chad, after a period of awkward silence, actually expressed pride. Others withered, poisoned by envy and resentment. I saw through their facades and recognized their insecurities. I remained grounded, focused on the future. I used my success to mentor other aspiring developers, sharing my knowledge and advocating for a more inclusive and innovative gaming landscape. I established a scholarship fund at my old university. In the end, success wasn't about proving Chad wrong or silencing the doubters. It was about proving myself right. I'd built a hidden empire, a secret world of innovation and achievement, all while navigating the expectations of others. The price I paid had been worth it. Now, years later, I visited a local university and noticed a young woman toiling away in a garage, fueled by the same dreams and determination that once burned within me. I smiled, remembering the sacrifices, the struggles, and the sweet taste of vindication. Never let anyone else's limited imagination define your potential. The final slide of the presentation displayed a single word: adaptive AI. The room erupted. Not in applause, but in a cacophony of questions, demands, and frantic side conversations. Chad was silent, his face a rigid mask. He looked like he'd swallowed a lemon and then realized the lemon was, in fact, a bomb. The senior partners, moments ago smug and dismissive, were now jostling for position, eager to be the first to congratulate me, to offer their services, to invest. The air crackled with a palpable tension, a power shift so abrupt it was almost comical. Amidst the chaos, Chad finally found his voice. "Maya," he began, his tone a strained mix of disbelief and grudging admiration. This is incredible. But why? Why all the secrecy?" I met his gaze, a slight smile playing on my lips. "Because," I said, my voice clear and steady, "sometimes the best way to build something great is to let people underestimate you." I then saw him. He was a young man, maybe 20, standing in the back of the room. He was wearing a worn hoodie and clutching a battered laptop. He was staring at me, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and inspiration. I knew that look. It was the look of a dreamer, the look of someone who dared to imagine the impossible. He was building something. I could feel it. My gaze drifted to the large window. Outside, the Manhattan skyline glittered, a testament to ambition, power, and success. I looked back at Chad, at the partners, at the Titan Games executives. I saw their reactions, their envy, their respect. And I knew with absolute certainty that this was just the beginning. I had played the game their way, and I had won. So, I said, turning back to the Titan Games team, shall we discuss the next steps? I knew what I was going to do next. I had to make sure the young man in the back was successful. I had no idea what would come next, but I had a feeling it was going to be great. As the initial shock wore off, the room began to buzz with whispered conversations. Chad's face, still a mask of disbelief, slowly morphed into a mixture of shame and grudging respect. His eyes, usually sharp and calculating, were now glazed over, as if struggling to comprehend the reality unfolding before him. He opened his mouth, then closed it, the words failing to form. The senior partners, who had been eager to get back to their important deals, suddenly crowded around me, their earlier condescension replaced with a sycophantic eagerness. They peppered me with questions, each one an attempt to ingratiate themselves, to be included in whatever I did next. Maya, this is remarkable. We had no idea. We'd love to discuss future investments. Perhaps you could come in and give a talk to our associates? I held up a hand, silencing the clamor. Thank you, gentlemen, I said, my voice steady. I appreciate the interest, but right now, I think we should focus on the task at hand. I turned back to the Titan Games team, a sense of calm washing over me. This was the moment I'd been waiting for, the culmination of years of hard work and silent defiance. Chad, finally finding his voice, stepped forward. Maya, he said, his tone a strange mix of pride and confusion, I had no idea. Why didn't you tell me? Why the secrecy? The question hung in the air, a testament to his ingrained assumptions and the chasm that had existed between us. I met his gaze, a flicker of amusement in my eyes. Because, I said, my voice soft but clear, sometimes the best way to build something truly revolutionary is to let everyone underestimate you. The truth of this hit him like a physical blow. His shoulders slumped and he looked away, the weight of his past judgments pressing down on him. Then I saw him. In the back of the room, leaning against the wall, was a young man, maybe in his early 20s. He was dressed in a simple t-shirt and jeans, his eyes wide with a mixture of amazement and inspiration. He held a worn laptop in his hands, and I could see the faint glow of a screen reflecting in his eyes. He wasn't a lawyer or a partner. He was a developer. He was like me. I smiled. Shall we move on to the next phase of the acquisition? I asked, turning back to the Titan Games team, the buzz of excitement and shock finally beginning to fade. The young man in the back, I knew, was going to be all right. He had the look in his eyes that I had once. The look of someone who will do anything, no matter how long it takes, to realize their dreams. And it was that look that made me certain that I had won not only the game but the war. The meeting with Titan Games proceeded smoothly, the legal details finalized, and the celebratory champagne popped. But the real celebration, the one I'd been anticipating for years, was just beginning. As the partners, still buzzing with a mixture of awe and belated respect, attempted to ingratiate themselves, I sidestepped the awkwardness. I saw Chad hovering nearby, his usual confident swagger replaced with a hesitant uncertainty. He cleared his throat. Maya, I owe you an apology. I was wrong. The words felt hollow, a pale imitation of the crushing dismissals I'd endured for years. Apology accepted, Chad, I replied, my voice devoid of any real emotion. I wasn't bitter, I was simply detached. His validation wasn't the prize, it was the freedom to pursue my vision and the freedom to create something new. I knew the game, and I knew it was time to move on. I excused myself from the post-signing festivities and made my way towards the exit. As I did, I noticed a ripple of movement in the crowd. The young developer from the back of the room, the one with the worn laptop, was making his way towards me. Ms. Miller, he asked, his voice hesitant. I'm Ethan. I'm a game developer too. I saw your presentation. It was amazing. Thank you, Ethan, I said, offering him a genuine smile. I appreciate that. I'm working on something, he continued, his eyes lighting up with passion. An AI engine for procedural generation. It's still early stages, but I'd love to hear more, I said, cutting him off. Come by Novatech Ventures next week. We can talk. His face lit up. Really? That would be incredible. As I walked out of Sterling and Vance, I felt a sense of both triumph and relief. The initial shock of the revelation was fading, replaced by a quiet satisfaction. I had won. But more importantly, I had done it on my own terms. The next few months were a blur of activity. I officially stepped down from Novatech Games, handing over the reins to a trusted team. I dedicated myself to Novatech Ventures, reviewing investment proposals, mentoring young developers like Ethan, and building a network of support for the next generation of innovators. Chad, despite his initial apologies, continued to try to re-establish his relationship with me, but I kept him at arm's length. He eventually gave up. The whispers, the envy, the attempts to capitalize on my success, they all faded into the background. I found that I didn't resent any of it. There was a sense of peace to be found in the new reality. I had a company, funding, and the freedom to do what I wanted to do. One day, I received a call from a member of the Titan Games board. They were interested in acquiring Novatech Ventures and Adaptive AI again. I knew they were desperate to keep the engine. I accepted. This time, the deal was far different. I would be the CEO, and the engine would be exclusively mine. Years later, I looked back on my journey, and I realized it wasn't just about proving others wrong. It was about proving myself right, not in Chad's world, but in my own. The sacrifices, the struggles, the moments of doubt, they had all been worth it. I spent more time with Ethan, and he was building something amazing. He had a spark, a drive, a hunger that reminded me of myself, and I knew he'd be something great. The final thought was the image of a young developer toiling away in a garage, inspired by my journey, reinforcing the idea that the most revolutionary ideas often emerge from the most unexpected places. The ending: never let anyone else's limited imagination define your potential. The news of the acquisition reverberated through the industry, turning me into something of a reluctant celebrity. The phone rang constantly, a barrage of interview requests, partnership offers, and invitations to speak at conferences. My inbox overflowed with messages from aspiring developers, some seeking advice, others hoping for a shot at funding. The practical changes were immediate and pervasive. My Austin home, once a sanctuary of solitude, became a temporary hub for meetings and brainstorming sessions. I hired a small team to handle the overwhelming influx of requests, a team of experienced developers and AI engineers. My daily routine, once dictated by coding and data analysis, now included board meetings, investor calls, and public appearances. Relationships, naturally, shifted. Chad, after the initial wave of apologies and awkward attempts at reconciliation, retreated. He seemed to realize that he couldn't simply rewind the clock and reclaim the relationship he'd once taken for granted. I saw him occasionally at family gatherings, a polite distance now separating us. It wasn't bitterness, more a quiet acceptance of the new dynamic. My parents, on the other hand, were ecstatic. They had always supported my choices, even when they didn't fully understand them. Their pride was genuine and unwavering, a source of comfort and strength. But the most unexpected consequence of the revelation was the emergence of a new kind of loneliness. The burden of expectation, the constant pressure to perform, and the knowledge that my every move was being scrutinized created a subtle but persistent sense of isolation. I missed the anonymity, the freedom to fail without judgment, the quiet satisfaction of building something in secret. I learned to navigate the complexities of this new reality with a mixture of grace and detachment. I embraced the opportunities to mentor young developers, to share my knowledge and experience, and to advocate for a more inclusive gaming industry. I used my platform to support initiatives that promoted diversity and innovation, pouring money into programs that would help the next generation of game developers. I became more selective about the people I let into my life. I surrounded myself with a small circle of trusted advisors, people who valued my vision and supported my goals. I learned to say no, to protect my time and energy, and to prioritize my own well-being. I still remember that young man, Ethan. He was the first one to really get it. He was a brilliant coder and worked with me on several projects. Adaptive AI became stronger because of him. However, the success did not come without its challenges. There were those who tried to exploit my success, to ride on my coattails, or simply to undermine my work. I learned to spot them quickly, to protect myself and my creations. I knew that Ethan would succeed, and I knew that he would be a great ally. I spent a lot of time traveling, visiting universities and coding camps, and talking to students about their aspirations. I found that I had to be more careful about what I said and how I said it. Everything was analyzed, scrutinized, and dissected. The most important change, however, was within myself. I had always been driven by a desire to prove others wrong. Now I realized that success was about more than that. It was about building something meaningful, about leaving a legacy that would inspire others. One evening, I found myself sitting in a dimly lit coffee shop, nursing a latte and watching the rain fall outside. I was contemplating my next move, the direction I wanted to take Novatech Ventures. The possibilities were endless. The next day, Ethan called. He had something to share with me. As I stared into the steam, I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that the journey was far from over. The silence in the room after the presentation was deafening, broken only by the frantic tapping of keyboards as investors scrambled to be the first to get a deal. Chad was a statue of mortification, his carefully constructed world of legal supremacy crumbling before his eyes. I saw him finally as he truly was, a man defined by his own limited vision. The accolades, the wealth, the power, they were all welcome, but not the point. The true cost? The years spent hiding, the constant self-doubt, the fractured relationships. The reward? The quiet satisfaction of creation, the unwavering belief in my own potential, and the knowledge that I had built something that would outlive me. It wasn't about proving Chad wrong, it was about proving the world wrong. It was about proving myself right. It was always about the game, but more importantly, it was about the next level. And now, watching a young woman, eyes alight with the same fire that had burned in me, coding in a garage, I knew this wasn't the end. This was the beginning. So, reader, tell me, what empire have you built in the shadows? What dreams do you nurture, unseen, unheard?